Hi, Chris. Can everyone hear and see okay? I'm just waiting for a signal from Manikam that it's fine to start. Okay, we might get going. So welcome to today's session. This is the third in the series, Finding Serenity in Turbulent Times. My name's Anna. For anyone who's not been before, I am a Tibetan Buddhist nun in the Gelugpa lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. This introductory course is primarily aimed at finding inner peace in our turbulent times. Thanks for everyone's responses. It includes a talk, a guided meditation, and if we have time at the end, an opportunity for questions. The course is drawn on the text Meditations on the Path to Enlightenment by our spiritual founder, Venerable Geshe Acharya Thupten Lodin. Meditations on the Path to Enlightenment is a remarkable book. Geshe Lodin says in his, who's just behind me, says in his biography that after his passing, his books, today studied by students all over the world, from as far away as Siberia and as far south as New Zealand and maybe even further, that his books are his representatives after his passing. So today we're going to examine wonderful states of mind, pathways to inner peace, the essence of our true nature called the six perfections. The pathways to inner peace may be hidden for the moment through the circumstances of our karma and negative states of mind. So we need methods to reveal our own great capacity, or our own capacity for great love and compassion and bodhicitta, which we explored last week. Perfections are another 6 kinds of remarkable practices required to awaken and fully awaken and nurture our minds. So it's really an opportunity to lift every aspect of our lives and all the situations that we encounter as we traverse the various circumstances that come up. The rewards of studying the 6 perfections can be very rewarding in both the immediate future and definitely in the longer term. So Geshe Loden taught that the path to much more peace and happiness is through meditation and through an intellectual understanding, and then combining both of those to embody and experience the insights of the Buddha very deeply. So this is mind training, and this takes our approach to the world to a whole new level. Buddha taught that we all have the capacity to become much better versions of ourselves, and also to become like spiritual warriors or saints, and even more. So it's one of his fundamental teachings. So we're not thinking, what he meant by this, that we're not thinking while we do these practices, I want to be a holy being, or I want to be recognised as a saint, or the Tibetan term, which is bodhisattva. We are thinking to ourselves strongly that the path to more happiness and less suffering for myself and for others that I encounter, a world blessed by peace and love and compassion and joy, and finding our higher selves, is found by taking this path. So having made a decision that we want to find this inner peace and become a spiritual warrior, which is an essential step on this remarkable graduated path, an essential step is training our mind in these 6 perfections. And the 6 perfections are generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. So today we'll do an overview of the 6 perfections. So each of these 6 perfections, generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom, becomes a perfection when it's joined with various qualities. And these qualities are very important, and they're the essence of our practice of these pathways to inner peace. And if we can learn these various qualities, and then apply them to all our actions of generosity and ethics and patience and concentration and joyous effort and so forth through mindfulness, that will be a great help. So these qualities are called the Supremes. That is not the Supremes, the upbeat all-girl singing group of the 1960s. This is the Buddhist Supremes. But they're even more memorable if we are keen to train our mind to be more positive and helpful. So the Supremes can also be seen as accelerators. They're the kind of handy tools if we want to become happier and more useful and to undertake this mind training. So they're very, very handy tools to learn about the Supremes. There's actually 6 altogether, but we often just, if we can get a really good understanding of the 3, that's a really, really good start, and we'll just touch on the 3 today. So the first of the Supremes is Supreme Reliance, and that's developing a really good motivation for our practice, a very pure motivation. And so last week we talked about having great love and having great compassion and bodhicitta, and they are linked. So great love is wishing for the happiness of all others. Great compassion is wishing to free everyone from suffering. And bodhicitta is recognising that if we reach the best of all personal development, that is called enlightenment or a full awakening, then we are perfectly positioned to help others to do the same and to have a complete release from suffering. And then, so that's the first of them, Supreme Reliance. So when we undertake any of these 6 perfections, we have supreme reliance, and we just can quickly remember to have a really good motivation for what we're about to engage in, whether it's generosity or patience or concentration or enthusiastic perseverance, whichever one, and I'll go on to explain each of these in a minute. So the second of the three supremes is called supreme method. And we use this while we're actually engaged in the activity in one of the pathways or perfections. And we remember impermanence and emptiness. That is, that everything is impermanent and empty of inherent existence. That nothing exists on its own without causes and parts and labels and conditions. Everything is a dependent arising and everything is interconnected. So, for example, if we were applying that to generosity, we would think about the emptiness or the impermanence of the giver, the impermanence of the object and receiver, and also we'd think about the impermanence and emptiness of the act of giving. So that means that we don't get too caught up in it. We actually, we're not so caught up in this activity, and it becomes very kind of self-focused and self-cherishing. So then the third of the supremes is called the supreme dedication. And to complete this very worthy action, or for example, giving, we dedicate the merit of our action to the benefit of all living beings, and especially attainment of a fully or awakened or enlightened mind. So why would we do this? We do this because this will multiply the benefit of our actions. We're not just helping one person or group of people, but our integrally interconnected community. So we help one and we help all. And very importantly, what we're doing at the same time is we are very much strengthening our mental imprint in doing the action of giving. So if we dedicate it to the well-being of all living beings, then we're acknowledging in ourselves that that's what our goal is, that we really do want to help everyone, and we want to bring our mind to the state that we're really perfected in our ability to be able to do that. So now we think about these 6 remarkable pathways or perfections. In Buddhism, they're called the 6 perfections. So the key issue in understanding the 6 perfections is always our state of mind. It's a filter of how we see and act, and therefore it's the focus of the practice is our mind training. So what we're doing is training our mind. So we begin with generosity, which is the first of the 6 perfections. So Geshe Loden, he defines generosity as the actions of body, speech and mind motivated by the virtuous thought to give. So any generosity motivated by bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, becomes a perfection of generosity. So as we explained last week, bodhicitta is a very big mind, but we begin by practicing that and thinking that through this act of generosity, I'm going to benefit all living beings. So really, it is our attitude at the time of giving that is really pivotal here rather than the action itself. There are many different ways to give. So I'll just go through those. The first of them is giving material things, which is one that we're all familiar with. So whether it's our wealth or possessions, enjoyments, Geshe always advised that it's most beneficial to always start by giving small items. Quality items without great value, such as beautiful food and drinks, flowers, small gifts. And in this way, we're able to practice giving without any residue or miserliness. So remembering that the mental attitude that counts, not the size or expense of our gift. And also, we're trying our very best to make the recipient happy. That's always a really important part of generosity. So we think, therefore, that I'm giving these beautiful flowers with love and wishing for all happiness and compassion to relieve suffering, and bodhicitta to achieve the pure, perfect mind of enlightenment. So according to Geshe, as I mentioned, a small, inexpensive gift is given with pure motivation It is far more beneficial for the mind than giving something very large, such as a big house or a Mercedes. That's not to say not to give those things ever if you have the means and you can have that capacity for generosity. But he used to say, and the Buddha said also, he used to say that even a tiny grain of rice or flour, given with the right motivation, is enough. So with pure motivation, we will create a very strong karmic imprint of benefit that actually contributes so much to developing our mind and towards others' happiness. And at the same time, it's very joyful. So we just think about the feeling that we have when we give a beautiful bunch of flowers and the recipient's incredibly happy. It brings joy to the recipient and it brings joy to the person giving. So the second giving is Dharma teaching. So Dharma is Buddha's teachings and it's known as Dharma. And the reason that this giving is special is it's using speech, your speech and your thoughts to help remove the suffering of others. So we might be talking with people and others about topics that might help them, and that could be impermanence, that everything's impermanent, especially in these pandemic times, that this won't last, as we can see with the numbers dropping in Victoria. A few weeks ago, it was looking very alarming, and now we're in a much better position. So that situation was impermanent. And we might want to talk to them about the value of patience, of great love and compassion. But we might want to put it into terms that they can understand. They may not have any natural interest in Dharma teachings or in Buddhist teachings. But, for example, if somebody's very upset, we can explain to them how it won't last. And for example, with patience and understanding, if they have patience with the situation, that it will change in time. So there's very simple logic to that kind of explanation. There's no need to have any mention in that situation of Dharma if a person's not interested. And that's very many examples of how that is possible, such as dealing with anger and the benefits of becoming more patient, helping a person to develop more patience. So if a person has a little bit of a spark of interest in what the Buddha has had to say or what Geshe Loden has had to say, then by all means we can give a Dharma explanation. So in the meditations book, giving Dharma is described as the best of all gifts because it creates a more lasting form of happiness and can assist the recipient to remove the negative aspects of their attitude, such as anger, and which will undoubtedly cause, as we'll talk about in a minute when we come to talk about patience, a great deal of suffering and probably a very unsatisfactory response. So giving a Dharma teaching, whether it's in non-Dharma terms or in Dharma terms, is a lovely way to give. A third way to give is giving protection. And giving protection is, as the title describes, it means helping others to overcome fear and any fear and anxiety they might have, and to protect them from any forms of danger. So it might be, giving safety advice on a construction site, carers, employees of schools and childcare centres and nurses and so on. So many people within our community are giving others protection. So according to the meditations text, this is also a very special form of giving because it will eventually lead, when the circumstances ripen to the giver, to a long life and a healthy life ourselves. So it's a very important activity to give protection to others. And the fourth form of giving is giving love. And this practice is continuously seeing others through the filter of love and through the eyes of love. And remembering love for Buddhists is sincerely wishing for the happiness of others. And the result of this practice is to experience continuous happiness ourselves and to be easily able to make others happy because we have developed this fortunate ability to want to make others happy and then to undertake this action. So giving love is also a marvellous form of giving. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of the perfection of generosity. The second perfection is the perfection of ethics. And when we talk about ethics, like in most aspects of Buddhist teachings and Buddhist thought, it links back to our relationships with living beings. So ethics is the abandonment of harm to others and any attitudes that support harm to others. And it's described as the foundation of all other virtues. So we have to take a little bit of care in thinking about this subject, because it can be easy to think that it means the complete eradication of harm and difficulties for others. But of course, that's not logical and it would be impossible. We can't actually do that. We can't be responsible for others' thoughts and actions. So really what it means more precisely is removing any harm or harmful thought that we inflict. So it means that our thoughts are not containing any harmful thoughts within them and that we're not doing any actions that are harmful. So Shakyamuni Buddha himself described that practicing pure ethical behaviour can be likened to a beautiful ornament. So when you come across a person who has got a great deal of ethics and is very, very pure, then they're like a beautiful ornament. So the person abiding in pure ethics is without any negativity or violence in their thinking. His or her physical actions don't give any harm, the speech is very gentle, and the thoughts are not impacted by any malice towards others or any wrong views. And people are naturally drawn to people who have good ethics, like a bee to honey, very pleasant and enjoyable people to be around who have very, very high ethics. They often have a very relaxed and open behaviour and no sign of malice and a gentle manner and a sense that they've got nothing to hide. They make others feel very comfortable. People feel really safe in the presence of such people. And their ambience is really appealing and welcoming. So that's a person with a great deal of development of an ethical approach. So we also need to avoid any of the negative, develop this mind to develop a perfection of ethics. We also need to be very careful to avoid what the Buddha called the 10 non-virtues, and that's no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct. So that's having sex with somebody else's partner, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle gossip, covetousness, malice, wrong views. And such a wrong view would be such as maintaining that something like karma or emptiness is wrong without having any understanding of what either of those really are. So that would be what would be described as a wrong view. So another form of ethics is deliberately focusing on positive actions and working continuously or working to develop the minds of compassion and joy and loving kindness and so many other good qualities. So having made that determination that we want to move our minds away from their more negative aspects towards more positive aspects. And then thirdly, the ethics, there's the ethics of benefiting living beings. So any positive action at all is part of this practice of benefiting living beings. So there's just numerous, I'm sure we can all use our imaginations, that there are so many activities to choose from and so many things needed, especially in this pandemic time, but really all of the time. We just see it so clearly at the moment. So just helping the elderly, helping people who are sick or homeless, connecting with distant friends and relatives if that's appropriate and that's going to bring them some happiness, helping anyone in danger, helping people who have got difficult means or low economic means, and other people according to their wishes, what they would like. So we can see how the perfections of generosity and ethics are actually quite strongly linked. So that's an overview of ethics, and now we're going to spend a little bit more time on talking about patience, because patience is one, the reason why we'll do that is because patience, developing a perfection of patience is something that can bring reasonably instant relief and a change in thinking in the way that we might approach it. And, anger and irritation and frustration can be really big issues for many of us. So yes, for many people or its siblings, we will call frustration, impatience, annoyance and irritation, even exasperation. These are really quite large hurdles to any form of peace and happiness. So even doing a little bit of work on developing patience can have some really, really quite quick and good results. So according to Shakyamuni Buddha, his teachings, anger creates the heaviest negative karma, and that's because of the amount of pain and suffering that anger can cause. It can really cause the destruction of any peace and harmony, and that's really in any situation, whether it's in the workplace or it's in the family or amongst people we thought were friends and have done us some serious harm. So when our mind is saturated by anger, frustration or impatience, we tend to exaggerate a situation, and it can be very, very difficult to bring it under control. It's not an easy situation, moving our mind from having frustration and anger and irritation to being a lot more patience in our approach. So we can become quite antagonistic and wish to harm the object of our ire if the circumstances are quite, egregious. So the causes of anger, we'll just have a little bit of time to look at those. And the causes of anger can arise when we feel that me or mine is threatened in some way. So also if I'm insulted or not given the respect that I believe that I deserve, my friends and family are criticised, your father is a liar, wouldn't go down too well. My property is stolen, we are treated unfairly at work, or if my view of self is undermined, then anger can arise. And then thirdly, if something we identify with, or that we have strong beliefs about, and we're quite attached to these, such as, our community, our cultural background, our political opinions, this kind of, attack on who we are and who we frame ourselves as can also lead to anger. So if we're especially angry about a situation, it can soon escalate to building quite a dark picture of those involved, and we can start to contemplate their general unattractiveness and completely forget about their good qualities, and think about, how they've been scheming, their very poor motivation, their terrible words, and we get caught up in this kind of chatter in our minds, like he said this and she said that, and it becomes quite agitating and difficult for us to settle the mind. And so anger is, such a strong, and irritation and frustration is such a strong emotion that they can even cause people who are normally quite rational and even to commit the most outrageous acts in retaliation for their grievances, and too often upon people that they normally love. We know many, many cases of that we see night after night on our television screens. And, anger can cause people to say extraordinarily hurtful things and abusive things that can cause great harm. And sometime later, when the situation has calmed down, that can be deeply regretted. So in the Path to Enlightenment, Geshe Loden says that the mind of patience, or the perfection of patience, the opponent of anger, guards our mind from being undisturbed from any harm or difficulty. So that's why it's really useful to develop the mind of patients, even if we're not a person who believes that we particularly suffer in this aspect. So, you know, for example, we can learn that to understand through the study of patients that the angry driver that we're having to deal with on the roads is really just a person who's bound by negative minds themselves and by a habituated response. The perpetrator is not the anger, or is not the offence. So anger can be a really dangerous and negative mind. So the perpetrator may have gone out and driven really erratically, but that's their negative behaviour. They are not inherently a bad person necessarily. A bad person. It's their behaviour that's the issue. So anger completely distorts our perception. And when we become angry with someone, that person appears to be a bad person, unpleasant, or a bad person from their own side. So instead of isolating the issue and taking out the issue and dealing with the issue, we can think that this is a really nasty person and we don't separate it. But what we forget is that somebody else viewing that person will have a very different perception, and they may see very different and good qualities. But our mind at this point has been caught up in the event, and we're feeling very irritated and angry and upset. So when we're very angry and upset, also the seriousness of the situation can often be exaggerated. So if the same criticism is directed at someone else, then it can seem insignificant. But when it is directed at us, then it can be very hard for us to forget the insult that has been directed our way. So, you know, if somebody's insulted and we hear that and we go, oh, well, that's not so bad, and we just all move on. But if it comes at us, it can be very, very hard to forget it. And sometimes that harm is imagined. We can project as well. So, for example, if we say hello to someone and they don't respond, maybe because they're preoccupied and they're a million miles away, we might even think that we've been snubbed and can sometimes be quite offended by that and have all sorts of projections. So a third mistake that we can make with the mind of anger is that we don't recognise the main cause of the problem. We believe we are angry because so-and-so did this, and it's completely wrecked our day. We think that the cause of our anger and our irritation and our frustration is outside of ourselves. But we're actually the ones that are allowing this situation to impact us. And, you know, we've already been through the situation and now we're carrying it with us like a kind of a sack on our back, so to speak. So we're reliving the situation and sweating on this terrible situation that happened, and we're allowing it to wreck our day. So in reality, the main cause is our own sensitivity or predisposition to being angry and upset. And without that primary cause of anger, our mind would remain undisturbed, irrespective of what is going on outside of us. That doesn't mean to say that we don't necessarily deal with the situation, because we may need to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the important issue here is that being upset is 100% our responsibility and problem. And it has so many faults, this mind of anger, and I'll just summarise them here. It feels very unpleasant, anger. It's got tension. It's got a nasty feeling of tension and stress. We might even lose sleep over it, and other forms of disturbance. It might put us off our food. Relationships can be really damaged so easily. You know, beautiful relationships, very close relationships, and the hurt of that event can be remembered for a long time into the future. We don't look so good when we're angry, when we've lost control. Can lead to loneliness, because a person with a lot of angry issues people aren't so attracted to that kind of person. If we've really lost the plot, then we can lead to embarrassment. And loss of our own self-respect due to our childish sensitivity and hasty response. We can feel really embarrassed about that. And it can lead to, more importantly, the escalation of difficulties. And that can be verbal and physical violence between individuals, the falling out of families. It can lead to disruption in communities, and whole countries arise from anger. And with perceived harms and held onto and then reciprocated. So in fact, it's the basis of war at its worst extreme. Anger is the basis of war, and there's no ability to negotiate or come to some kind of peaceful solution. So then also irritability and frustration. If we make no effort to be mindful and control them or develop our minor patience, then it's easy to establish this habit of irritability and have an irritable demeanour. So let's now just talk about this mind of patience. So patience is a completely different experience that is peaceful and helpful to one's experience and approach to life. It does not necessarily mean, and this is really important to remember, it does not necessarily mean relinquishing the situation and not dealing with it. It is about an underlying attitude and methods to deal with circumstances as they arise, considering as the situation passes, whether it's just one to let go through to the keeper, or if necessary, addressing the issues at the right time in a calm and peaceful way. That might be straight away. It may be best to deal with it immediately, but if it's a really egregious situation, it may be best to let everything settle and then work through the issue that's arisen. So the various types of patience taught by Geshe Loden in the Path to Enlightenment include the patience of remaining indifferent to the harm inflicted by others and not immediately seeking to retaliate, instead of being skillful and aiming for a peaceful resolution. The patience of voluntarily enduring suffering, where we recognise the source of our suffering is our negative karma and recognise this opportunity to get rid of it. This is especially useful when we're unwell or, facing situations that we can't change, or we might need to endure, indeed, such as, a period of serious illness or a passing in the family and all the associated grief that goes with that. So the third one is the patience of definitely thinking about the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching. So it's to recognise the value of our meditation and study as being a pathway to transform our mind and to more peaceful and patient states. So there are answers when things are going really wrong, and the answers are generally within training our own mind to manage things in a better way. So how do we practice patience? We remind ourselves again and again of the benefits of patience and the faults of anger, and this gives us a strong inspiration and aspiration for engaging in the practice of patience. And patience can be used in our daily activities right now. We can work on cultivating patience with the people that we interact with and situations we encounter during the day. And if we do that by practicing a little bit each day with consistency, our practice of patience will definitely improve until it becomes perfect. And we can begin by practicing at home with our partner or others that we live with, and then with our family and friends and colleagues and so on. So these are all wonderful opportunities to practice patience. So at times we might find this habit, that we have a habit of anger or irritation, that it's really quite hard to remove, and that there is no end to this habituated state of mind. It is certainly a biggie for a lot of people, and that's no doubt. It is hard, but these teachings make it very clear that any negative mind or any habit that we have developed can be overcome. So Geshe Loden describes it in The Path to Enlightenment as compared to a jagged rock, and that is smoothed down by pounding waves over a long period of time. So just the same as this jagged rock will eventually become very smooth and easy to walk over, so our mind of irritability and frustration and even anger will settle if we make the determination and apply mindfulness and practices to help resolve it. So we must never give up. We keep trying, and eventually the mind of patience will come. Our mind is impermanent, and it is not permanently angry or irritable. So it is very, very fixable, this kind of mind, and will lead us to so much more happiness and peace if we can deal with it, and enjoyment. So it's also very helpful while we're developing this mind of patience to remember the kindness over and over of other people, even those who are causing us issues are described as being very kind. It's hard to see that at times, but without them it's really impossible to develop our patience. So the great teachers view even vexatious people as being their best friend, and there are many stories of high monks who make sure that there are one or two vexatious people within their own entourage who keep reminding them of the importance of patience. So the real enemy is not the people who are giving us a hard time. The real enemy is anger. So if we can remember that, and when this very strong negative mind of anger is vanquished, then we'll all have minds of much more peace and happiness and joy and love and compassion, and what a much better world that will be. So the fourth of the perfections is joyous effort. And joyous effort or energetic perseverance is a mind that delights in positive states of mind. It's also known, it's called joyous effort or energetic perseverance or enthusiastic perseverance. And so it helps to generate our enthusiasm and raise our energy to meditate and study these teachings. And when we have achieved joyous effort, or even attain some joyous effort, we can achieve anything. And then even enlightenment, even this fully beautiful, fully awakened, fully engaged mind is possible when we have achieved joyous effort. So according to Geshe in Meditations in The Path to Enlightenment, on the Path to Enlightenment, he says the main obstruction to gaining joyous effort is various forms of laziness. So the first of these is called the laziness of procrastination. And when we find so many excuses not to meditate and study. And we might think, I have a good job, I have children to care for, life is enough, and we have so many reasons. We find so many perfectly justifiable and perfectly reasonable, perceived reasonable reasons not to do our meditation and study and to delay. And though there is no doubt that it is to do formal meditation when our life is very full, there is no doubt that that's challenging. Many of us have had those times in our lives. But the resolution of this type of laziness requires some various forms of recognition. So one is recognise that there's not necessarily as much time left in our lives as we think there is. So there is so much going on in our lives. We have to eat and we have to sleep and we have to meet with friends and we have to work. So in fact, the time that we have left to do this study while we have the opportunity is not so much. The second is thinking about the worth of this activity and just how much giving it priority or some more priority up our list is going to produce some beneficial results. And also to remember that meditating is not necessarily sitting formally on a cushion. So meditation in Tibetan Buddhism is described as developing virtuous states of mind, and that can be done while we're on the run. So that's about mindfulness. It's about learning some of the basics and then applying them during the day to our activities. So we actually have got no idea what is in front of us. So last year, who would have imagined this year's pandemic? So we can talk to ourselves around this kind of thinking. We've got no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. We have encountered these teachings, and if we find them of some value, then this is probably a really good thing to do. So meditation and a little study can make everything else work a lot better and help us to deal with all of these challenges. So it's a matter of lifting the priority a little bit. And it's also really useful to cut through thinking about impermanence, that death is definite and the time of death, our death, is completely uncertain. We have no idea when that's coming. The same as we had no idea in November 2019 or even December 2019 that we would be in lockdown or self-isolating or wearing these funny masks all the time. We had no idea that was going to happen. So this is a good way to reflect on impermanence and that we don't know what's around the corner to help, accelerate us taking up this really good opportunity to meditate and study. And that can help, generate this joyous effort and this enthusiasm. And as I said, it's not just sitting on a cushion, that recognising that meditation, not just sitting on a cushion. We can do this all the time. We can read a little bit of Dharma, and then we can work with and live with some of these wonderful concepts such as great love and great compassion and bodhicitta. And these 6 perfections, we can embody them into everything we're doing. So if you're looking after a family member, or you're working at your job, or you're looking after your children, you're studying, you're bringing up your family, and you're doing it with perhaps the 3 supremes, all of your different activities, and you incorporate that into your full day. You can actually, we'll talk about that next class, you can actually incorporate your meditation practice into your whole day. And so this is what this laziness is of procrastination is talking about, is saying that we don't really have a reason of being too busy. That's actually a laziness of procrastination. And then there is the laziness of being attracted to meaningless activity. And that's self-explanatory, but it goes a little bit deeper. It also refers to any activity that is motivated by a negative mind, such as attachment or anger. So it could include things like, too much television, hunting and killing, working too hard, or so much sport without a good motivation, just to accumulate, and then also, working just to accumulate lots of money or develop a high reputation. So it doesn't actually mean that, in this case, that the activities are necessarily meaningless. What it means is that we need to have a good motivation for our activities and to make sure that our activities are beneficial and useful. So it is great to do sport and exercise to keep well and fit and create the physical basis to best help ourselves and others. Television can be fantastic as well when we need a break, and it's also a marvellous window to the news and so many other worlds that we would never ever get to experience otherwise. Earning money to sustain ourselves, our family, and to be generous to others and the community is also really important and really great. What is meant by this one is it's our motivation for doing something. So it's having a really, really good set of priorities about why we're doing something as we set up whether it's our weekly schedule, our daily schedule, our weekend schedule, and just to be really, checking in on ourselves to make sure that our motivation for doing something, including resting when we need it, is really a good motivation. So then the next one is laziness of inadequacy, and this is a lack of confidence in our ability to achieve mental growth and enlightened states, and this is called the laziness of inadequacy. So we might think, like, I'm too busy, I'm too old, I'm too set in my ways, meditation's so hard, as though it's something, that you get instantly, it's a learned skill. There are all sorts of justifications for us doing nothing. So this is developing some great ways through joyous effort is to get our thinking right in this regard. And we can think that Shakyamuni Buddha himself, who became a fully awakened, completely developed person, He himself started with so many delusions and negative minds, as did all the great teachers and all the great practitioners. They're no different. They just had one big difference, is that they decided at some point in time to apply this joyous effort and build the confidence within themselves to progress step by step along the path. That's the difference. So the Path to Enlightenment teachings describe 4 methods to address any lack of confidence and feelings of inadequacy that we might have. And the first of those is called aspiration. So if we think over and over again the advantages of a practice, we will build our spontaneous personal commitment and inspiration. So we won't have to then think about it. So if we think about the value of these teachings and why they're so important, why we would want to develop ourselves and go on this major personal development growth path, then we will spontaneously go to the cushion or spontaneously become incredibly mindful as our day progresses. The second of these 4 methods is called steadiness. And that steadiness is to have the stability to, once we've decided to take on a particular pathway, we've thought about its value, whether it's worthwhile or whether it's something we want to do. And we will shortly meditate on something called the 3 self-confidences that builds our stability and devotion to continue this work progressively step by step and stay steady. And the great and very well posted statement by His Holiness, never give up. Then the third one, once we have got our aspiration and our steadiness, is joy. So when we build the self-confidence through aspiration and steadiness, we can then approach any task with joy. And there's a beautiful verse that talks about the elephant that jumps into the lotus lake and the beautiful feeling that the elephant has. So it's that kind of really, really joyful feeling, like a child immersed in play. And we don't want to stop, but we want to learn more and more about this magnificent path. And then discarding is the 4th of these, and that's just making sure that we take a rest when it's needed. If we're becoming, in danger of being overtired or overstretching not just our body but our mind from our efforts, then we should put it aside and take a rest. It's very important. If we push too hard, it'll damage our practice and our health. And, there are stories of people who go at 100 miles an hour and decide, I'm going to become a bodhisattva or a Buddha and a really highly enlightened being, and then they study and meditate and 20 hours a day. And some of these people become burnt out, so that's not a good way to go. Discarding is a very important aspect of this. So changing the mind towards enlightenment or a better approach is a significant project. And if we're planning to walk from one side of Australia to the other, it's important that we have periods of rest from it as well and give ourselves a break. So then the 5th of the pathways or perfections is concentration. So I'll just touch base on this because we are going to study this in more detail at our next class in a couple of weeks' time. Next weekend is Father's Day. So I'll just touch on concentration here. So by using concentration, our capacity for mindfulness is developed, and we develop awareness that can be applied actually to all aspects of our lives by overcoming what is known as agitation and dullness. So we get mental stability, and we get peacefulness and deep relaxation and deep focus by training our mind to a place of stillness. So according to Geshe-la, once the mind is tamed by single pointed concentration, it becomes very serviceable, and it can be directed with great strength to any object of knowledge. And our mind will benefit in many different and ordinary and developmental ways if we can, we'll have increased concentration. And by concentrating, we can, on something beneficial such as love, and compassion and the other perfections, including generosity, patience, and ethics, then we can begin to realise them and embrace them and bring them very strongly into our own mental continuum in a very deep and profound way. So we spontaneously become, with these minds, we then have these minds of love and compassion. It's called realisation. So it's a realisation of love and the realisation of compassion. So that is why concentration is so incredibly important, because it will help to bring us to the full realisation and the most profound understanding of these various minds. So it is said that the ultimate aim of our concentration practice is to achieve a state known as calm abiding, and it's a very special form of concentration, possessing what is known as the bliss of pliancy, and we'll talk about that more in the future. So according to the path to enlightenment, there's a second part to this concentration. This perfection of concentration is special insight, and according to the path to enlightenment, special insight is when, having completed the 9 stages of calm abiding meditation, the practitioner then induces a state of pliancy and can deeply analyse the object of his or her meditation and discern its actual nature or essence. So when we've got to this unbelievably amazing point of pliancy, that's when we can continuously meditate on our chosen object without any interruption. When we've got to that, then we have a really amazing ability to understand these topics at a very deep level. And so all the sufferings that we experience are from delusions or negative minds. So the real source of the delusions or negative minds is what is known as ignorance. And so ignorance here does not mean being stupid or foolish. It means that we understand the nature of reality. We have a very clear understanding of the nature of reality. And so to actually be able to overcome this ignorance, we need to cultivate special insight. And without having this very clear special insight, we cannot completely cut the delusions, and because we cannot see them clearly enough. So that's why we need to develop our concentration. So calm abiding will steady the mind and give it a very clear view of the object that needs to be removed. So therefore, to attain this special insight, this ability to see these topics very, very profoundly, we need calm abiding. So we need to practice a union of calm abiding, eventually a union of calm abiding and special insight. So there is a step-by-step description in the path to enlightenment of what we need to do to attain this, this sort of ultimate concentration of calm abiding. There are a number of obstacles to that. There's laziness, and there's forgetfulness, and there's laxity and excitement, and there's non-application and over-application. So what happens in these, there are 9 stages, and we go through these 9 stages step by step as we develop our concentration, and we increase the amount of time that we can hold our concentration through this study of calm abiding. And so in the first stage, we're able to hold our concentration for 1 minute, and then we move right up to the 9th stage of effortless concentration on an object for any length of time. And that's so many benefits for us in both our everyday life, but also specifically and most importantly in our Dharma studies. So to realise calm abiding, the great teachers advise a 6 to 9 month solitary retreat. And for most of us, that's not practical, and most of us are not ready for it either. But we can progress the stages in our regular meditation, and I have heard it said that in our ordinary meditation practice that we have the potential to reach a 4th or 5th stage, which is a very elevated level of concentration. In the second stage, for example, we extend from the 1 minute of the first stage, we extend through to 2 to 5 minutes. And by the time that we reach the fifth stage, gross laxity, which is sleepiness, and gross excitement, which is agitation, they no longer arise when we reach the fifth stage. Therefore, any practice that we do with our breath or other objects is very useful in every aspect of our lives. And reaching even the fifth stage of calm abiding will have enormous benefits for both our meditation practice and other things where we need to concentrate. But we'll look at all forms of meditation when we come to study that, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about calm abiding in a couple of weeks' time. So the sixth of the 6 perfections or pathways is wisdom. So emptiness of inherent existence is often only taught when people have been studying for a while. It's a reasonably complex subject, but it's a mix of newer and longer-term students at intro, and so I'll just touch on it briefly. So it's only when we can see through this illusion and open ourselves to the fluidity and continuous change of life that we can really relax into clarity, compassion, and courage. So that lofty goal makes emptiness a very important and subject, and any effort to understand emptiness can be very worthwhile. So to understand emptiness, we need to think about self-existence, which is another term for independent or inherent existence. So we tend to see everything as self-existent, as having a permanent reality. And we did talk about some of this previously in the first session when we talked about impermanence. So we tend to see everything having a permanent reality from its own side. So in contrast to this, the real situation is that self and phenomena are all dependent on causes, parts, labels, and conditions. The word ignorance is used here, as I mentioned earlier, because the real knowledge of the condition of persons and phenomena is unknown. It's not about us being dull. It's actually about us not really understanding the nature of reality clearly. And so there are 2 types of emptiness of self-grasping of the person and the self-grasping of phenomena. Inherently existent persons and phenomena are actually utterly non-existent. That doesn't mean to say that things aren't existent. It means it is the grasping at the independently or inherently self and phenomena that is at the root of all of our negative states of mind, and this is what really causes us the suffering. So the Buddha taught that by waking from this sleep and this belief in independent self and phenomena, our delusions and suffering will permanently be destroyed. So they'll no longer arise once we really, really clearly see our interconnectedness and that we are not separate. We're not separate and we're not permanent phenomena. So the wisdom realising emptiness is therefore the real opponent to all the pains and difficulties of our samsaric life. There are 2 types. There's the self-grasping of the person, and this is the consciousness which grasps at the phenomena of person as being inherently or independently existent. And then person, self, I, and self-identity are synonyms in the study of the self-grasping of person. And then there is the self-grasping of phenomena, which is the consciousness which grasps at any phenomena, a table, a chair, trees, flowers, the beach, forest, houses, cars, and says that they are also inherently or independently existent. It holds that these phenomena are independent of their parts, their labels, conditions, and their causes. But if we endeavour in our meditation to find an independently existent person or thing, neither of these will be found. So the empty mode of existence can be demonstrated by a dream. So in a dream, we might dream that a tiger, a person, a vicious animal, another different version, a vicious animal is attacking us. And when we wake up, we realise that it's all a dream, and in fact there's nothing there. So understanding emptiness is likened to this. Doesn't mean to say there is nothing, it's just that we're not independently existent. Another method is to think about a flower. This might be a little bit easier. Which part is the flower? Is it the flower? Is it the petals? Is it the stem? Is it the stamen? If we say it is the whole, what happens when we take away a part of that flower? Is it still a flower? Therefore, the flower is dependent on its parts, its label, so many different conditions, such as the language of the country it was grown in, our agreement, it will be called a flower, and our viewing consciousness. So as said, emptiness, the sixth perfection, can be a challenging study at first, but the rewards are manifold. So just a word of caution on the subject of emptiness, because some people are really, really attracted to studying it. It's a really, really interesting topic. This Buddhist concept of dependently existent person is not saying there is no I. Of course, conventionally, there is an I, and to function, we need to say, I did this, or I have a new job, or I need to go to hospital. What the proposition is saying, that on closer examination, there is no independent I or ego, that this independent I is based on so many other factors. So this is just a taste of this very vast topic of emptiness, or empty of own being, and dependent arisings. But it's very worthwhile if you are inclined to start looking out for it and listening and reading and thinking about the topic of emptiness. So that's the 6 pathways or 6 perfections. So just in summary, and then we'll do some meditation. The 6 perfections are highly beneficial for the development of our mind. We can work on them whether we are meditating on a cushion or being mindful during the day. And we can use the supremes to accelerate the development of our minds of generosity and ethics and patience and joyous effort, concentration and wisdom. So they're very accessible. If you'd like to read more in more detail, there's quite a lot more detail on the 6 perfections and pathways in the Meditations book. Okay, so now we'll do after all that information, we'll do some meditation. And we'll just do some breathing meditation, and then we will also just explore, we'll take a couple of examples, we'll explore the benefits of patience, and we'll also do the 3 self-confidences of joyous effort. Okay, we get a really nice posture with a straight back, our shoulders relaxed, our right hand sitting on our left, and our tips of our thumbs together, and then just relax in our lap, and then the elbows slightly away from the torso, our head looking down, just down the bridge of our nose, not too high, or we'll get agitated, not too low, or we get sleepy. Resting our tongue on the roof of the mouth, with the tip just behind the teeth to prevent the build-up of saliva. And then we just begin by withdrawing from today's events by just observing the movement of the breath. And we choose the location to do that is most comfortable. Some people like to follow the breath as it moves up and down the nostrils. Some the rising and falling of the diaphragm, or even the upper chest. If you have any thoughts, we just let them go very gently, just like the passing clouds in the sky, and we return our focus to the breath. Just for this very short time, everything else can wait. Just closely focused on the movement of the breath, completely relaxed, letting go of any other thoughts, watching with a tiny little bit of our mind that we don't become sleepy, turning our mind and our focus purely on the movement of the breath. And then we're going to reflect on the benefits of patience. Because when we deeply accept the logic of patience and stabilise our mind on these benefits, we will naturally and spontaneously change. So we think patience is a mind of great strength that can remain peaceful in the face of any difficulty. Patience enables us to retain calm in any situation. We think to ourselves, if the situation can be remedied, why be unhappy about that? If the situation can't be remedied, why be unhappy about that? The patient mind is very stable and able to bear any harm without being adversely affected. Peaceful mind is like a great ocean. There are all sorts of disturbances on the surface, but the peaceful mind is very stable and calm underneath. With patience, the intensity of our concern is eased. Everything is impermanent. The weather, the economy, and relationships are all in a state of flux. Everything is changing constantly. So the situation won't last forever, however bad it is. Knowing the situation will soon pass can ease the intensity of our concern. With the mind of patience, we can remain happy and peaceful, no matter what others say and do, in the same way that we cannot cover the entire surface of the earth with leather to protect our feet. We cannot control the external world. This is similar to covering the soles of our feet with leather. We remain protected from thorns and rough ground wherever we go. Everyone feels comfortable in the presence of a patient person. Peaceful people are trusted and are naturally popular. And finally, through patience, we can help others control their anger and frustration by not retaliating to harm. A conflict doesn't build up with ever more angry responses. We remember again and again the kindness of other living beings, potentially even the kindness of the person who is now upset. This is our turn to help make the family, the workplace, or the community a happier and more peaceful place to live. When everything settles down, if needs be, we can take the time to sort through the issues. So then in the second part of this meditation, we're going to think about the 3 self-confidences to build personal strength and resolve, to apply joyous effort or enthusiastic perseverance to our journey. Shantideva said, actions, delusions and capability. To these 3 apply self-confidence. I alone shall do it is the self-confidence of action. So in this first self-confidence of action, we think. We don't need to rely on the help or support of anyone to succeed in the spiritual journey. We are perfectly capable of achieving this ourselves. We may have the love and support of a teacher, but it's ultimately us taking all the steps. In this way, we develop the self-confidence of action. The second self-confidence is of capability, recognizing that when we are under the influence of negative minds, we cannot even achieve ordinary goals. Therefore, we recognize our own ability to complete the task and strengthen our resolve to do so. The great Indian Master Shantideva's comment, powerless under delusion, these beings cannot achieve even their own aims. They are incapable, but I am not. For that reason, I will undertake this. Then thirdly, the self-confidence of delusions. This is to resolve to totally defeat our negative minds, overcoming them in any way we can, and having the energy to persist and be watchful for even small issues. Shantideva said, I must win against everything, and nothing shall win against me. I, a son of the lion-like conqueror, should abide in such self-confidence. So if we want to develop our joyous effort and our enthusiasm for the teachings and developing positive minds, we can focus on the marvellous 3 self-confidences. of actions, delusions, and capability. And then we finish the session in recognition of the effort of this meditation and this class. We dedicate the positive energy we have created towards more happiness in our lives, more good conditions, better health, and also happiness and good conditions for the people we love, for strangers, and if we like, for all living beings. We can release our concentration. So I'm sorry we've gone over a bit over time, so I may not have opportunity for questions today, but you can email them through if you have any to events@toshita.org. Next Sunday, as I said, is Father's Day, so for those who'd like to join the next session, it'll be on Sunday the 15th of September, and we'll be focusing on different types of meditation for a happier life. So thank you very much for joining us today, and all the very best for the week ahead. Thank you. Thanks everyone, and thank you for your kind comments.